Hello and welcome to Quiz Time. I'm Jess, and today our quiz is for all you baby boomers out there. So, 100 questions. Are you ready? Let's go. Which country declared its independence from Malaysia in 1965? Brunei, Singapore, or East Timor? Singapore. Who won the Nobel Prize in Literature in 1969? Samuel Beckett, Yasunari Kawabata, or Alexander Solzhenitsyn? Samuel Beckett. Which organisation was founded in 1966 by Huey P. Newton and Bobby Seale? The Weathermen, the Black Panthers, or Students for a Democratic Society? The Black Panthers. True or false? The title of the Beatles' last studio album was Let It Be. That's true. The Tet Offensive, a major turning point in the Vietnam War, occurred in which year? 1968, 1967, or 1969? 1968. Who was elected President of the United States in 1968? Lyndon B. Johnson, Richard Nixon, or Hubert Humphrey? Richard Nixon. What was the name of the Soviet spacecraft that became the first to successfully land on Venus in 1967? Venera 4, Luna 9, or Zond 5? It was Venera 4. Which film won the Academy Award for Best Picture in 1966? The Sound of Music, A Man for All Seasons, or Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf? A Man for All Seasons. Who became Prime Minister of Canada in 1968? Lester B. Pearson, Pierre Trudeau, or John Diefenbaker? Pierre Trudeau. Which country experienced the May 1968 student and worker protests? France. Which event occurred in 1965 in Indonesia, resulting in a violent anti-communist purge? 30th of September movement. In which year did the Cultural Revolution officially begin in China? 1965, 1966, or 1967? 1966. Which Soviet leader signed the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty in 1968? And those are your three options. My Russian is not the best. Leonid Brezhnev. The Manson family murders took place in what year? 1968, 1969, or 1970? 1969. Which space probe became the first to send back images from the surface of Mars in 1965? Mariner 4, Venera 7 or Luna 10? Mariner 4. Who assassinated Robert F. Kennedy in 1968? Lee Harvey Oswald, James Earl Ray, or Sirhan Sirhan? Sirhan Sirhan. The Green Revolution was spearheaded by which scientist? Norman Borlaug, Fritz Haber, or Albert Howard? Norman Borlaug. Which group staged a violent uprising known as Bloody Sunday? Ulster Volunteer Force, Irish Republican Army, or Sinn Féin? Irish Republican Army, or the IRA. What was the name of the treaty signed between Indonesia and Malaysia, officially ending the confrontation in 1966? Manila Accord. Which political figure led Nigeria during the Biafran War 1967 to 1970? It was number 3, Yakuba Gowon. Which American author published the controversial novel Portnoy Complaint? Philip Roth, Saul Bellow, or Kurt Vonnegut? Philip Roth. The Prague Spring was a period of political liberalization in which communist country? Czechoslovakia. Which scientist made headlines for announcing that humans would need to colonize space within the next 30 years to survive? Stephen Hawking, Wernher von Braun, or Carl Sagan? Very glad they were wrong. Stephen Hawking. I quite like the sunshine and earth. Thank you very much. The 1966 film The Good, the Bad and the Ugly is part of which film trilogy? Dollars Trilogy, The Godfather Trilogy, or Star Wars Original Trilogy? Dollars Trilogy. Which British rock band released the influential album Tommy in 1969? The Rolling Stones, The Who, or Pink Floyd? The Who. Who succeeded Gamal Abdel Nasser as President of Egypt following his death in 1970? Anwar Sadat. Which political group launched a coup in Greece in 1967, establishing a military dictatorship? The Junta of Admirals, the Colonels, or the Red Brigades? The Colonels. What notorious American organized crime figure was arrested in 1967 after spending most of his life eluding capture? Vito Genovese, Frank Lucas, or Al Capone? Vito Genovese. The Khmer Rouge began its rise to power in which country during the late 1960s? Vietnam, Cambodia, or Laos? Cambodia. Who was the founder of the environmentalist group Friends of the Earth in 1969? David Brower. The Battle of Karameh in 1968 involved Israeli forces clashing with which group? Syrian army, Palestinian guerrillas, or Egyptian Air Force? Palestinian guerrillas. What was the first country in the world to legalize same-sexual relations between men in 1967? France, United Kingdom, or Netherlands? The United Kingdom. Which African leader delivered the Arusha Declaration? 1, 2, or 3? Julius Nyerere. The song Symphony for the Devil by the Rolling Stones references which historical event? American Civil War, Russian Revolution, or the French Revolution? Russian Revolution. Which country was involved in the soccer war against El Salvador? Honduras, Nicaragua, or Guatemala? Honduras. The famous Bloody Tuesday protest took place in which city? Birmingham, Selma, or Jackson? It was Selma. The Act of Free Choice resulted in the annexation of West Papua by which country? Australia, Indonesia, or Malaysia? Indonesia. Who was the commander of the US military forces in Vietnam from 1964 to 1968? George Patton, Douglas MacArthur, or William Westmoreland? William Westmoreland. Which comic strip character debuted in 1967 and quickly became a symbol of counterculture rebellion? Fritz the Cat, Doonesbury, or the Fabulous Furry Freak Brothers? Fritz the Cat. Which famous ship sank in 1965 off the coast of Norway? SS Andrea Doria, SS Yarmouth Castle, or SS Skagerrak? SS Skagerrak. What chemical defoliant was used by the US during the Vietnam War? Agent White, Agent Blue, or Agent Orange? Agent Orange. Which Prime Minister of India was assassinated in 1966 during a religious ceremony in a temple? Lal Bahadur Shastri. Which pop group was the first to break the attendance record for a concert at Shea Stadium? The Beatles, the Rolling Stones, or the Beach Boys? The Beatles. The cultural festival known as Expo 67 took place in what city? Montreal. The Nixon Doctrine was first outlined in which country? Vietnam, Guam, or Japan? Guam. What band is known for popularizing the Summer of Love with their 1967 single, San Francisco? Be sure to wear flowers in your hair. That song's going to be in my head all day now. Scott McKenzie, but a beautiful song it is. Who authored the electric Kool-Aid acid test? Ken Kesey, Hunter S. Thompson, or Tom Wolfe? Tom Wolfe. The famous Earthrise photograph was taken during which space mission? Apollo 8, Apollo 11, or Gemini 6? Apollo 8. The TV series Star Trek depicted a future starship known as the USS Enterprise, USS Voyager, or USS Discovery? USS Enterprise. What country won the FIFA World Cup in 1966? It was England, and we have still not won it since. The 1967 Six-Day War saw the rapid defeat of Egypt, Jordan, and Syria by which nation? Israel, Lebanon, or Turkey? Israel. Which writer won the Pulitzer Prize for fiction for The Keepers of the House? Catherine Ann Porter, Shirley Ann Grau, or Edora Welty? Shirley Ann Grau. Which controversial American politician declared his candidacy for governor of Alabama in 1966 and later ran for US president? Barry Goldwater, Strom Thurmond, or George Wallace? George Wallace. Who was the first woman to win the Nobel Peace Prize in the 20th century, doing so in 1968? Betty Williams. The Cuyahoga River fire occurred in which US state? New York, Ohio, or Pennsylvania? Apologies, my American friends, for my pronunciation. I'm sure you'll let me know how you say it. It was in Ohio. Who became the first African-American woman elected to the US Congress? Shirley Chisholm, Barbara Jordan, or Ella Baker? Shirley Chisholm. Which British rock band released the album Let It Bleed? Led Zeppelin, The Kinks, or the Rolling Stones? The Rolling Stones. Which footballer led the Brazilian national team to victory in the 1970 FIFA World Cup? Zico, Pelé, or Romario? Pelé. The 1966 Miranda v. Arizona Supreme Court decision led to the requirement of what? The reading of rights to arrested individuals. Which US politician won the 1968 New Hampshire Democratic primary? Robert F. Kennedy, Eugene McCarthy, or George McGovern? Eugene McCarthy. Planet of the Apes was based on a novel by which French author? Pierre Boulle, Albert Camus, or Jules Verne? Pierre Boulle. Which Soviet dissident writer was expelled from the Soviet Writers' Union? There's some lovely Russian names here. Alexander Solzhenitsyn. Which famous jazz musician passed away in 1967 after shaping much of the 20th century? John Coltrane, Duke Ellington, or Thelonious Monk? John Coltrane. The controversial book, The Feminine Mystique, was written by who? Betty Friedan, Simone de Beauvoir, or Gloria Steinem? Betty Friedan. Which Canadian province passed its controversial language law in 1969, promoting bilingualism and French education? Quebec. Which African country faced a devastating famine between 1967 and 1970? Nigeria, Ethiopia, or Sudan? Nigeria. Which Japanese company introduced the first pocket-sized electronic calculator? Sony, Casio, or Canon? Canon. The first episode of Sesame Street aired in which year of the late 1960s? 1967, 1969, or 1966? (1969). Which influential graphic novel was serialized in 1967, becoming one of the earliest examples of adult-themed comic books? Barbarella. Which film by Michelangelo Antonioni is considered one of the quintessential films of the swinging London era? A Hard Day's Night, Blow Up, or Alfie? Blow Up. Which Czech reform leader was a central figure during the Prague Spring of 1968? Václav Havel, Alexander Dubček, or Jan Palach? Alexander Dubček. Who was the leader of the Black Panther Party during the late 1960s? Bobby Seale. Which American athlete famously gave the Black Power salute during the 1968 Olympics? Tommy Smith, Jesse Owens, or John Carlos? Tommy Smith. The Indo-Pakistani War was fought over which disputed region? Gujarat, Punjab, or Kashmir? Kashmir. Which avant-garde artist married John Lennon? Yoko Ono. The first major sit-in of the US civil rights movement took place in which city? Greensboro, Nashville, or Atlanta? Greensboro. Which senator from New York was assassinated after winning the California primary in 1968? Ted Kennedy, George McGovern, or Robert F. Kennedy? Robert F. Kennedy. Which country hosted the 1968 Winter Olympics in Grenoble? That's France. Grenoble is in France. Who was the first astronaut to orbit the moon solo? Michael Collins, Buzz Aldrin, or Jim Lovell? Michael Collins. Who won the Nobel Prize in Literature in 1969 for his contributions to the 20th century Western literature? Pablo Neruda, Samuel Beckett, or Jean-Paul Sartre? Samuel Beckett. Which country experienced the Cultural Revolution from 1966 to 1976? North Korea, China, or Vietnam? China. Which South American revolutionary figure was captured and executed in Bolivia in 1967? Che Guevara. The Manson family committed the murders of actress Sharon Tate and others in which US city? San Francisco, New York, or Los Angeles? Los Angeles. The Yippies were a radical countercultural group led by which figure? Tom Hayden, Jerry Rubin, or Abbie Hoffman? Abbie Hoffman. Which iconic American folk singer headlined the Newport Folk Festival in 1965? Bob Dylan, Pete Seeger, or Joan Baez? Bob Dylan. The My Lai massacre became a symbol of what during the Vietnam War? Anti-war sentiment and atrocities. Which scientists' work on plate tectonics gained widespread acceptance in the late 1960s? Alfred Wegener, J. Tuzzo Wilson, or Harry Hess? J. Tuzzo Wilson. True or false? The Battle of Bogside was a key event in the history of troubles in Scotland. Is that true or is it false? It's false. It was actually a true battle, but in Northern Ireland. The term flower power became associated with anti-war demonstrations during which famous event? The Summer of Love. The Australian referendum resulted in a landmark decision regarding which group of people: Pacific Islanders, Indigenous Australians, or immigrants from Europe. Indigenous Australians. The film Guess Who's Coming to Dinner was groundbreaking for its portrayal of interracial marriage, gender equality, or LGBTQ+ relationships. Interracial marriage. Which US astronaut was the first to perform a spacewalk in 1965? Ed White, Neil Armstrong, or John Glenn? Ed White. The Torrey Canyon oil spill occurred off the coast of which country? The United States, Japan, or the United Kingdom? It was the United Kingdom. We were affected here in the Channel Islands very much so. Charles Manson claimed to be inspired by which Beatles song in his orchestration of the Tate LaBianca murders? Revolution, Helter Skelter, or Blackbird? Helter Skelter. Which country won the Eurovision Song Contest in 1967 with Sandy Shaw's song Puppet on a String? The United Kingdom. Yes, the World Cup in '68 and Eurovision in '67. The riots at the Democratic National Convention in Chicago were described by protesters with which notorious phrase? Make love, not war, power to the people, or the whole world is watching? The whole world is watching. What surreal art installation was created by Yoko Ono and John Lennon? Pillow Talk Revolution, Bed In for Peace, or No War, Love In? Bed In for Peace. What is the nickname of the 1967 Chevy Impala that became an iconic muscle car and later gained fame in the TV series Supernatural? Baby, The Ghost Machine, or Blackbird? Baby. What notorious psychedelic drug became a symbol of the counterculture movement? LSD, psilocybin, or mescaline? LSD. And your last one, you baby boomers. Who famously destroyed his guitar on stage during a performance at the Monterey Pop Festival? Pete Townsend. So, how did you do today? Drop your score in the comments below, and of course, like and subscribe so you get notified every time we post a new quiz. And please join us next time on Quiz Time.